Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad that you're here. I'm your host, Shana, and we're going to be talking about financial issues today from a biblical worldview. So Financial Issues is a listener and partner supported ministry, and we help our listeners and partners defund darkness by adopting a biblically responsible investment strategy where you're screening out companies in corporate America that are using shareholder dollars to fund dark agendas like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, things that don't line up with the Christian values. And we also, our second part of our mission is to fund the light. So not enough just to defund darkness, but we encourage you to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver. Hopefully you are supporting your local church and other ministries. If you're looking for good ministries to support, of course, this is a great one. And we also have other partners that you can find on our website, financialissues.org, like Preborn, who is pushing back against the darkness of abortion, and Crossroads Kids Club, who sponsors clubs in public elementary schools to help spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, coming off of the break from Christmas and New Year's, we've ended up with a lot of questions that have been sent in. So we wanted to spend some time getting you some answers today. So Grant, you want to get us started? What do we have on tap on the Ask Shana questions?
Absolutely. We have the first question from CJ Everson. Would you ask around and see if anyone has issue with the equity trust? I'm thinking about transferring funds from Fidelity to equity, so I have the ability to invest in real estate and other tangibles. Also, I'm looking at investing with Cardone Capital and was wondering if Financial Issues has vetted them or has heard anything about that would disqualify them as a company to invest in. Thanks again and Happy New Year. Thanks, CJ.
All right, CJ. Well, no, we do not. We have not vetted the company that you mentioned. It doesn't really fit with our strategy. So whenever you hold things like, now I do like real estate. I personally own real estate, rental properties, and believe that they're a good investment, but I don't own them in an IRA. So it's not part of our strategy. When you own tangibles inside of an IRA, there's all kind of complexities that come up. I mean, it's okay for someone that wants to navigate all of those things, but you've got issues with IRS regulations. For example, if you own metals, you have to own the metals that are approved to be held in an IRA. You have to hold them at approved depositories. There's certain requirements that have to be reported with the IRS. If you own real estate in IRA accounts, there's a whole set of rules that you have to follow. There could be issues with appraisals. If there's income generated by the real estate, you have to make sure that it's recorded properly, or else you face certain kind of taxable issues. So, it's just better. Our strategy doesn't include any of the tangibles that you mentioned, but if you're intent on owning those kind of things, it's probably better just to do it outside of an IRA. If you listen to the show for any length of time, I'm not a huge fan of concentrating wealth inside of an IRA, because for the longest time, I believe that taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are now. Now, that could be changing depending on what all the Trump administration could get done. There's hints at abolishing the income tax altogether, although I think that would be a very welcome change. It would be a tough thing to get done. So at this point, we just have to work with the knowledge that we have at hand. So I do caution people about concentrating too much wealth inside of an IRA.
Awesome. And we have a question from Bob. I was full-time employed to end July 2023, pending recall to work. We'll see what the Lord has in mind. But I have a Vanguard 401k account with about 115k and a checking account with about 60k. What to do? Roth IRA, CD ladder, or what else would you recommend, Shana?
Yeah, good. So, by the way, Grant, my clock's not working, so you'll have to keep me on schedule
we have about 5 minutes.
Okay, good deal. Okay, so Bob, I guess where I would start would be to make sure that any money that you're going to invest, that you have a long-term time horizon for, meaning that you're not going to need that money in the next 6 months to replace tires on your car or make a repair to your house or take a trip or something like that. Any money that you invest, you would want to have a long-term time horizon. So the best way to go about it, we believe, is to become a partner if you're not already and follow our asset allocation models. When you get on our website, there's a lot of videos about how to get started and those kind of things. So, it's really hard to tailor specific advice, whether you should open a Roth, open a CD ladder or things like that, because there's a lot of things that I don't know about you. And so, in private practice, when I operate, I have a lot of regulations. I have to know a lot of things about a person before I can give specific advice. So what I would say would be to, consider your tax bracket, consider your time horizon, and look at some of the asset allocation models that we have. If you do decide to do a Roth IRA, what you need to know is that if you've never had one before, you have to have earned income to be able to contribute. So we're now in 2025. So I don't know if you meant 23 or 24 in your question, but if you had earned income in 2024, you can potentially still make a contribution to a Roth IRA up until your tax filing deadline of 2025. If you have a high risk tolerance or a kind of risk tolerance where you can accept some fluctuations in market value, then you may want to look at some stocks that are on our list. You may want to look at some of the mutual funds. We do have a stock strategy where you build your own portfolio through mostly individual securities, and we have a fund strategy as well. If you want a little bit more of a less hands-on approach, you can go in that direction. You can also look at some of the preferreds that are on our list if you're just interested in fixed income. If you have a low risk tolerance, maybe you want to consider the CD ladder that you mentioned, although the window of opportunity for that CD ladder has sort of passed. I mean, we were in a situation where we had an inverted yield curve, and so short-term rates were higher than long-term rates, and that strategy has kind of run the course. But, if you have a low risk tolerance and you don't want to have any volatility in your portfolio, maybe that's something that you consider. And if you're considering a ladder, maybe you want to compare CD rates with treasury rates as well and sort of diversify in that way too.
All right. We also have a question from Lonnie, which is a similar question that we got on Friday. Shana, E38 has recently been added to the buy list. You mentioned that the company provides a 1099 rather than a K1. I assume this makes the company more appropriate for tax sheltered accounts than LLPs that provide K1s. Blessings, Lonnie.
So I think she's talking about the way that the income from the investment is reported. So, MLPs are master limited partnerships, and they, instead of getting a 1099 for dividends issued, they issue a K1. And that just creates a little bit, sometimes in some cases, a little bit more work with your tax reporting. You have to wait for the K1 to come in. A lot of times K1s come in either really close to the tax filing deadline, sometimes after it. And if you had enough income distributed from those, sometimes you have to make an amendment to your tax return. And then there's issues if you own them inside of a qualified type of account like an IRA, you may still have to pay taxes on some of the income there. So, we believe that there's a compelling case for owning the ones that are at least on the buy list anyway, on our buy list, whether it's a qualified account or just a regular taxable account. Although if you don't want to deal with some of the extra things that you have to deal with a qualified account, you may opt to just own them in your non-qualified type of account.
All right. We have about a minute left, but we have this question from Rob. I'm so sorry, Dennis. Dennis asks, MA34, I use an E-Trade platform. I do not show future dividend payout for 2025 in the estimated income feature. Do you know if they have stopped paying dividends? Praying God's blessings on the entire FISM team.
No, they have not stopped paying dividends. In fact, they declared one in December that is payable January 17th of 2025. So that would put that particular company with about 11.5% yield if you're looking at the trailing 12 months. So I guess the short answer to the question would be no, they are still paying dividends, although they are not super consistent. They tend to pay semi-annually and some special dividends. All right, folks, we got to take a break, but stick around. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
We believe in being faithful stewards of what God has entrusted to us. And nothing is more important than investing in the next generation. The most impactful way to do this is by sharing the message of Jesus with young people. Crossroads Kids Club is an after-school program that brings the gospel to elementary school children in public schools nationwide. Together, we can make a lasting difference for the kingdom. To learn more and join the movement, visit reachOurschools.com. Again, that's reachOurschools.com.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. They do an ultrasound, and that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Burt. We're going to continue with these partner questions. We've got quite a few of them that have come in over the holidays, and we want to get you guys some answers. So, Grant, what do we have?
Awesome. We have a question from Rob, and the question is, longtime member, faithfully following the FISM strategy. Wife is 71, and we have 2 traditional IRAs and 1 joint investment account. No debt and a fully funded 6-month emergency fund. My issue is because we can now apply to apply so much to our IRA, they will be totally funded by February, meaning all investing for the rest of the year would have to go into our joint account. We were wondering if we should open up a Roth account to use for the rest of the year to save on taxes. What is your advice, Shana?
Well, I like the idea of a Roth, especially if you don't have one yet. I don't know what tax bracket you're in, but here's the deal. The limit for, and I believe he's 70 there. So the limit that you can put into an IRA is $8,000 for the year. That's not for a Roth and a traditional. You can't do 8,000 into both. It's a combined limit. So you could do an IRA and a Roth, but you have to figure out how much you want to put in each up to a total limit of 8,000 per person. And you also have to make sure that you have earned income. I didn't see anything in the question there indicating whether or not you do have earned income. So make sure that you have that. I probably, depending on what tax bracket that you're in, would opt for a Roth IRA just because of the more preferential tax treatment. So if you're in retirement, I know lots of people are usually in a lower tax bracket because they're able to control their income a little bit more, depending on where the income is coming from. And if you're in a low tax bracket, that's even more of an argument to go into the Roth, because the tax saving today is probably not as compelling as what it would be in the future.
Awesome. We have a question from Jan. I'm new to FISM. I just rolled over my retirement to a brokerage account to manage funds biblically. So I'm starting from scratch. So listening to Shana, I was planning to deploy money every 3 weeks for the next 5 to 6 months to take advantage of cost averaging. When I go to purchase some Timothy funds, Fidelity will charge me about $50 per fee. Would you recommend buying the entire allocation for that fund at once? And I have $500,000 to deploy.
Yeah. So if you're going to try to deploy $500,000, every 3 weeks, that's a lot of $50 fees that could potentially add up to a lot. So unfortunately, Jan, I have more questions than I have answers at this point, but maybe getting you to look up some of these things might help you resolve the issue. My first question is, are you trying to buy A shares or iShares? If it's iShares, that would make sense to me that they're charging that transaction fee because there's no upfront commission. Perhaps if you buy the A shares at $500,000, if all of the money is going into the mutual funds, you would qualify for a significant discount on the upfront commission. So that's one thing to look into. The other idea, and this is probably the best option if it'll work for you, is if they are allowing you to buy iShares, which we're told that only iShares can be bought in fee-based accounts when you're working with an advisor, but I've been told by multiple partners that several different discount brokerage firms will allow you to buy the iShares, which have the lower overall expenses. So what you could ask them is if the fee would be waived if you set up a systematic investment plan. So let's say that you wanted to invest $10,000 every 3 weeks. Maybe they only allow you to do it once a month, but that would work too. But once a month, and you want to invest a total of $12,000. What you would do is set up a plan where you invest $1,000 a month for 1 year. So it has an expiration date. It wouldn't invest anymore after that 12th month. And a lot of times it's been my experience that there is no fee attached, or the systematic fee is not attached. If it's an A share, you would still be subject to the commissions. But if it's an iShare, they may waive that fee for every purchase if you're doing a systematic purchase. So you could try that.
Awesome. And we have a question from Leah. I used to listen to Dan on AFR. I don't have much, $10,000, but I need honest help in placing it so I know where it'll grow. I'm 56 and still work. I don't own anything per se, or don't owe anyone anything. Sorry about that. Everything is paid. I have $22,700 also set aside and $5,500 in the bank. Please help me, and I would gladly become a partner. I just need some help and direction.
Yep. So Lee, I'm glad that you found us. So we've been off of AFR for a while. We're on the CSN network. Perhaps you have a CSN station near you and you can start listening to the show again. Alternatives, though, if you do YouTube or Rumble or Facebook, we do stream live on those platforms, and we have our own phone app so that no matter which station or platform we may go on or off of, you can always get us. Whether you have an Apple or an Android, just go to your app store and you can search for the Financial Issues app. I think it's showing up on the screen if you're watching now. And you'll be able to download that. You'll get you'll be able to either watch live or go back and watch or listen to the podcast. Speaking of podcasts, we're also on Apple and Spotify. So there's a ton of ways that you can catch the program. Now, as far as which direction to go, I would recommend becoming a partner. You could try to find, maybe a financial advisor to work with, but, I would think at this point, maybe just getting started, you don't really need much financial planning, and it might be more expensive than it's worth to work with an advisor. So if you're willing to learn the program on your own, we have lots of great videos. Just go to financialissues.org. It's super easy to become a partner. You just click on that link and register, and then you're in. You can go and you can start watching the videos. You can tune into the monthly partner conference calls. You can still listen to the program as often as you can find time to do it, and you can stream it when it's convenient for you. And then you can even use our portfolio tracker to help you get started. So there's a investment strategy where you build your own portfolio, you build your own mutual fund out of individual securities and a handful of funds and ETFs. Or if you want a less hands-on approach, you can use the fund ETF models and just go through that way. So
awesome. And Alejandra has a question. I have life insurance and have a cash value of $300K as to this date, and could have a loan of $270K as a max at 4% interest. I would like to pull out the $270K and to invest it into my portfolio. Is this a good move? And he's 65.
That's a tough one. So, at age 65, or at any age really, if you have a permanent type of life insurance, that's what you would have if you have a cash value. It's one of two kinds. It's either a whole life or a universal life. So without knowing the exact difference, it's a little bit hard to answer the question, but it would be a very high risk strategy. And here's why. So in a life insurance policy, you have cost of insurance, and that is the cost of leveraging the money. So if you have $300,000, I don't know what your death benefit is on the policy. Maybe it's $500,000 or $1 million, and that's what your beneficiaries would receive when you die. So the cost of that insurance increases every single month as you get older. And once you cross that, 60, 65 age barrier, that cost starts to exponentially increase. And so what you would see is that if there's no premiums being paid to the policy, and if there's not enough cash value in the policy to pay the premiums, you run the risk of your policy lapsing. And so if you've got $300,000 in the policy, but maybe a death benefit of $500,000 or $1 million, that money is sort of leveraged, and you have more of a benefit, or your heirs have more of a benefit by keeping the policy in force. So also, if you cause the policy to lapse by not paying the premium or have enough cash value there to pay for the cost of insurance, it could potentially be a taxable or partially taxable event. So, you want to weigh all of that out. The other risk is that the money that you invest, you could always use that money to pay back into the policy to keep it going, to keep it in force. But if you invest the money, there's always market risk that comes with investing. So what if the money that you invest is down and you need to get it out to pay the premiums to keep the life insurance policy in force? Then you could be forced to sell your securities that may be down in value, and then if you sell them, they never have the opportunity to recover. So it is a strategy that comes with a good bit of risk. I'm not saying that it's a terrible idea, but you have to be aware of all of the risk. And if you did decide to do it, I would caution strongly against taking the maximum amount out. Maybe you want to consider a smaller amount.
Awesome. And I think we have enough time for one last question. We have about a minute and a half.
Okay.
We have Franco, and he's age 80, and he not only has a great-granddaughter, but he has a great-great-granddaughter. Okay. And he wants to start an investment for her, and she's 5 months old. and he says, I would like to get her into an insurance company, and can you help me find one for her? She still has a long time to invest, and I will invest for her as long as I'm able.
Okay, that's a great thing to do for a granddaughter, a great-granddaughter, or great-great-granddaughter. If you're looking for an insurance company, we do have one or two on the buy list. Where you would go if you're a partner is to the financials section, the financials page of the buy list, and then you can go through and you can read the descriptions, and it'll be easy to tell which one is an insurance company. So you can do that if you've already made up your mind that that's what you want to do. However, another option that I would consider, especially if they have a long time horizon, like you indicate, is to opt for a technology stock instead. So I think there's more of a chance of higher appreciation in a technology stock than an insurance company. All right. Thanks for that question. I hear the music. That means that time is up. So if you're watching on a station that only carries the short version of the show, we wish you a farewell. For everyone else, stay tuned. We're going to be back with more financial issues.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com. That's reachOurschools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that great insight from Shana there. And a big thank you to Grant Ace, one of our faithful producers here, for filling in for myself and Sam in those first couple segments there. I'm back, as well as Sam is back from Christmas break. So we're excited. Sam, welcome back, buddy. Great to have you.
Yes, I have returned from my long Christmas nap.
That's right.
Very sleepy and very full of probably a sinful amount of cheese and other goodies. So
delicious, brother. Well, Sam, a happy feast day of the wise men to you, my friend, as we close the book on the Christmas season. I guess for the final time, a Merry Christmas to you all. Today is widely observed across the Western Church as what many call Little Christmas. It's the day of observance when the wise men visited the Lord Jesus Christ and presented him with gifts. Pretty cool. There's also another not really a feast day today, Sam, but there is sort of a day of remembrance in our country's history as the darkest day in the history of our country, January 6th.
It's the day democracy almost died,
absolutely.
And yet here we are. It's pretty amazing. But it is kind of a fun day, too, because today is the day that Trump officially becomes president-elect, because Congress certifies the electoral votes, and Kamala Harris gets to be the one to officially certify that. So that's pretty delightful if you're a conservative.
Juicy stuff, for sure. Obviously, it's not the first time this has happened where the loser has had to, because there have been many vice presidents trying to be presidents who have lost, Al Gore being one of them, and I think Richard Nixon in 1960 was another one. But boy, Sam, this is an interesting day for sure.
Yeah, just goes to show that politics is all soap opera when it boils down to it.
Oh yeah, yes, that's exactly right. It's good to keep an eye on, but folks, you'd be much more better serving your family or your church rather than focusing all your time on wondering what's going on in politics. Last thing I'll say about welcomes today. Folks, this is a special day for me. This is not my official 4-year anniversary, but it's the sort of the unofficial day. It was January 4th, 2021 that I started here at the ministry, but it was a Monday. So, just like that day, the first Monday of the new year, my 4th anniversary, I love this place. And I love being able to be with all of you and hopefully get to serve all of you. And I pray the Lord gives us many more years together. So grateful for each of you and grateful to be here today. Let's get to the markets here real quickly, folks. So we shared this last week. The markets, they're looking to continue a strong run from the past year. They had some strong finishes last year. Each of the major indices rallying to a strong outing. On Friday, the indices rallied once again. The S&P was looking to snap a 5-day skid, and it was able to do so. By Friday's closing bell, the Dow Jones finished about 0.4% positive. The S&P was well above a full percentage point, about a 1 full and quarter percentage points. And the NASDAQ was creeping up on 2 percentage points, actually. It hung around right around 1.77%. And the pre-markets were continuing in that same direction. The markets, as they've opened, real quickly here, all in positive territory. The Dow Jones is up 0.5%, the S&P 500 is up 4/5, and the NASDAQ is up 1 1/3. So good start here for the markets in the first full week of 2024. Mostly on the rise today, I think, in regards to a jump in chip maker shares. So that is not unfamiliar. We've seen a lot of that driving the markets up.
Because of Foxconn's earnings, right, Seth?
Yeah, that's we're seeing quite a lot of that. I saw NVIDIA was moving upwards today as well. So, fun stuff there. Hey, Sam, I'm glad that you popped in there because we've got our weekly. If it was annual, it wouldn't happen very often. Fortunately, it does, though. Our BRI exam with Sam, we're calling it.
It's the first one of 2025.
So I guess you could say it's kind of annual. Yeah, right.
So far, it's annual. Next week, it will become weekly or bi-weekly.
Exactly.
And, we go from there.
And this is an unfortunate one, Sam, because this company actually shares a name with you, and they're doing some pretty nasty stuff. What have we got here from Kroger and Sam's Club?
Yeah, so this is a story that came out in the middle of December, but we had some other things going on. But I still found it fascinating, and I wanted to share it with you guys because, it's another example of companies backing off of things that dishonor God, this time in the abortion industry. And we'll have a discussion of whether this is a backing off or this is just a mistake, because there are some questions about it. So this is Kroger and Sam's Club. Yeah. They issued statements in mid-December saying their abortion pill was displayed on their website by mistake. Sam's Club issued a statement saying, we use a third-party vendor to aggregate medication pricing, and their tool provided incorrect information. A similar statement was also issued by Kroger as well. Now, I say this is interesting, and there is a question about, is this really a mistake, or is this just backing off because of public pressure? Because because this came, the move that is, came only days after Live Action, and I believe it was also the Washington Stand as well. Both issued articles talking about how Kroger and Sam's Club were selling the abortion pill mifepristone on their website. Following that reporting, both of them then backed off about that. So that does raise the question, Seth, and I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think this is genuinely a mistake, or is this kind of like what we were seeing with Disney a couple weeks ago, where they're backing off some of their more woke, progressive ideas because of public pressure?
Yeah, Sam, that's a good question. And, you know, my heart always wants to be charitable towards these companies initially, to say, yeah, you know what, everybody makes mistakes. We've seen this too many times that I don't think this was a mistake. I think just like with Disney, I think Kroger and Sam's Club did this purposefully, and then when they received backlash for it, they tried to cover it as a mistake. I mean, Sam, don't we? I mean, we see this all the time. Yeah. What else do these companies say? I mean, none of them will come out and say, yeah, you know what, we fully support abortion, we did this, and now we're backtracking because of public pressure. They're always going to spin it as it was an honest mistake, we didn't realize it, something like that. Again, I want to be charitable to these people, but we've seen this story play out over and over again. And like you said, we saw this a couple weeks ago with Disney pulling back on the stuff that, you know, they were doing. It's the old classic example of the, you know, child predator is stalking a child until the parent shows up and then they run away. And that's exactly what this was. I think it really was. So it's unfortunate to be sure, but you know, I do think seeing, you know, for us to be able to see what's really happening, that's, I think, one of the main purposes of this show, Sam, is for us to be able to kind of reveal to people, hey, this is what's really going on, and hopefully to be able to see who, in some sense, the good guys and the bad guys are. So.
Yeah, I'm willing to be a little bit more charitable to them. I tend to be skeptical of these companies. And listen, they could totally be lying. The only reason I'm wondering if it is genuinely a mistake on their part, it's not really a good reason, but I just don't know if currently the pro-life movement has as much cultural power as, say, the anti-DEI movement. So I just don't know if a company is going to be worrying as much about what Live Action has to say as opposed to someone like Robbie's Starbucks. So you've not been seeing that type of pressure come to bear on abortion-type companies. So I do wonder, is it genuinely a mistake if it's backing off? So I hope it's backing off, because that means that I'm wrong and that the pro-life movement does have more power than I think it might in the market. So we'll see. But as we've talked about before with Disney, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we want the companies to do the right thing. We don't really care why they're doing it. We just want them to be doing the thing that they should be doing, which is offering good products and staying out of the culture war, and that includes out of the abortion fight. Yeah, and so with that in mind, Sam, I'm thrilled with the end result. And you're exactly right. It's a results-based business, this BRI, and so we care about that end result. And if companies have a genuine change of heart, that's great. Also, if they're just like, we don't want to lose money, and they change what they're doing, that's great too. So really good stuff there, Sam. Thank you for that. We got the Ag Report coming up here, folks, and then we'll have more financial issues right after this. Good to hear from Craig, as always, for our farmers and ranchers. Here's today's Ag Report, and we'll be back.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for January 6th. Well, in one fell swoop, the corn market removed all of the previous gains for the week. The active selling that we had seen in the country ground to a halt with the price collapse, but funds jumped in mid-session and added close to 20,000 contracts to their short position. At the close, March corn was 8 3/4 cents lower at $4.50 3/4 per bushel. Soybeans also lost an entire week's gains during Friday's session. Now in Argentina, the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange reports that the good to excellent rating for that crop has decreased by 5 points down to 53% good to excellent. And while it is a decrease, it's still much stronger than the average rating of 37% good to excellent for this time of year. There is definitely some stress in our Argentinian crop from lack of normal rain, but the crop is also hanging near a 10-year high rating for the week, and Friday at least that was putting pressure on the market. March beans were 20 1/4 cents lower at $9.91 3/4. World wheat values didn't climb with U.S. values last week and then didn't follow them lower as they hit new contract lows. Now, the U.S. is currently valued at its best position versus Russia since the beginning of the marketing year. That means that soft red winter wheat could find some business in the Western Hemisphere by displacing Russia, at least for the time being. Minneapolis March wheat was 11 3/4 cents lower at 5.77 3/4. Kansas City declined by 12 3/4 cents to close at 5.39, in which Chicago down 16.5 cents at 5.29 1/4. Cotton futures are approaching their life of contract lows. They closed 91 points lower on Friday, settling at 67.66. That life of contract low was just down there at 67.48. Livestock futures were mixed. We had February live cattle futures 45 cents higher at $95.05 per hundredweight. March feeder cattle were $2.02 higher at $264.17 per hundred. And February lean hog futures dropped by 37.5 cents, closing out the session at $80.77 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures kept moving towards their life of contract high. January futures were up 9 points at 20.45. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Egg Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's a challenging world that we live in right now. There's a lot of corporations that frankly stand for some pretty evil things. We need to be responsible stewards of our money, putting it in companies that will support our values.
If you are interested in equipping yourself to engage in the culture, I would just highly recommend availing yourself of the Ministry of Financial Issues.
That was probably the best decision that we ever made.
Align your investments with your faith. Become an FISM partner today at financialissues.org.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support Preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks for joining us on Financial Issues today, folks. You know, I always enjoy doing those BRI exams with Sam, really because that highlights, I think, the value of our strategy. That you don't have to invest in companies like Kroger and Sam's Club that are selling drugs that kill babies. That you can actually invest your money in companies that just do a good job at selling a product that doesn't harm people. And so I really believe probably the biggest spiritual benefit for why being a partner with Financial Issues is so good. You know, folks, by the way, we don't want to just pass this by without talking about the grave need that we have as a country to repent from the sin of murdering babies through abortion. And so we are trying to do our part with the ministry by being a megaphone for ministries like Preborn. Preborn is in the fight. They are setting up clinics in high concentrated abortion areas, major cities in this country, and they're boots on the ground working to be hands-on with mothers and fathers as well as with their children too, to save these babies from abortion and also to present the gospel to mothers and fathers. Preborn sees, I think this past year they saw over 60,000 babies saved, which is just amazing. We praise the Lord for that. And the Financial Issues family had a huge part to play in that. So thank you all so much for that. Check them out at preborn.com. But that's part of why we want to highlight some, like the companies that we had just mentioned in that last segment there, because there is such a great evil, and we want to do our part to put a stop to it. That's what we're trying to do here at the ministry, and you all are helping us do that. So thank you so much for that. Let's get to a couple more headlines here, Sam. What do we got going on in the steel industry? There's a bit of a kerfluffle between Biden and the steel
that's an understatement, I would think, right?
Absolutely.
So a couple days ago, President Biden officially decided to stop Japanese company Nippon Steel from buying U.S. steel, that's in Pennsylvania, for almost $15 billion. That decision comes amid concerns that the purchase of an American steel company by a foreign company, a Japanese company, could create some national security risks. Biden said in a statement, a strong domestically owned and operated steel industry represents an essential national security priority and is critical for resilient supply chains. President-elect Donald Trump, he also supports this. He does not want foreign companies buying American companies, part of his whole America First agenda. But there are some trade-offs here, just to give you both sides. So President Biden and Trump both think this is a national security issue. But on the other side, U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel, they're saying, no. This is actually for America's benefit because actually U.S. Steel needs this fresh injection of money. In fact, Nippon and U.S. Steel are now suing the Biden administration for blocking this deal. They're saying the whole thing is meant to help the U.S. by quartering off China, by bringing Japan and the U.S. together. U.S. Steel also says blocking the purchase could put American jobs at risk by forcing factories to shut down, because without this fresh injection of cash from Japan, they're just not going to be able to continue operations. So I'm sure there's going to be a fight for this for some time to come. And it is interesting, and I'm not entirely sure who's right here. There are some interests to balance.
They always tend to be the more fascinating topics to talk about when there's not like a clear right and wrong, it seems like. First of all, Sam, I find that it is wildly fascinating whenever we have a headline like this where Biden and Trump both agree. That's a dead giveaway for, okay, this is going to be tricky to try to figure out here. But I think also, it gets to the question of how, as people who believe in the free market, how much of support should we have when any administration, liberal or conservative, steps into what is technically a free market issue like this? So Biden wants to stop a Japanese company from buying a U.S. company. That's global trade, but that's still the free market there.
Yeah.
You could probably land on either side of this issue and say, well, you know what, this is for the good of America, so it's a good thing Biden's doing this. Or on the other hand, you could say he is partaking in gross overreach, disrupting the free market. We're just trying to have we're trying to live and let live here, right?
And that's the company's arguments, right?
Yeah.
They're saying, listen, this is illegal interference with the free market. Also, they're saying we fit all the regulations already. We went through the process. You were okay with this up until just a minute ago. And they're arguing the whole thing's political in nature. So, I'm not sure. It would be a lot easier to come down one side or another, say if this was China buying a U.S. company. But still, there is a national security argument here because, say we go to war, we do want to be having all our steel made in the United States.
Sure.
So there is a risk there, and it's not like it's you can just dismiss that argument altogether, but it is a bit more complicated than either side's making it.
And Sam, you brought up a great point with going to war as well. I love having international allies. Like, I think it's wonderful to have international allies. That also makes things a little bit complicated in a global world that we live in now. And really, I kind of think that World War II was kind of almost like a parable of that. That it's great, and you could say World War I was also. It's great to have allies, but if one of them gets involved in a war, they're dragging you into it. Now Oh boy, is it better to have a little bit of more of an isolationist approach to it? It's an interesting question.
And at the very least, a self-reliance approach.
Yeah,
you want to be able to make all the things at home, so you're not reliant on anyone else when it comes to a crisis. You can get it done right here and right now.
Yeah, big time. Well, Sam, let's turn our attention here to closer to home, speaking of which, and another kind of interesting issue that we've been looking at off and on for the past several months. What's going on with the dock worker negotiations?
Yeah, this has been going on for some time. I think this was one of the first stories I covered here since coming onto the show.
Back in October, right?
Yeah. This is the dock worker negotiation. still ongoing, in case you forgot about that. Fox Business, they confirmed on Thursday that negotiations between the International Longshoremen's Association and port employers will resume on Tuesday. If you remember, the union went on strike in October for a couple days before reaching what was a tentative deal at the time, including a 62% wage increase over 6 years. But there were still a couple of issues still on the table. Most importantly, and this was at the crux of the whole problem, was automation. These dock workers do not want to be replaced by robots, and they're saying, like, it doesn't matter if we get a wage increase. What matters is if we're going to have a job in the next couple of years. Right. So that's really what these negotiations are about right now, and it could threaten the whole deal if they don't come to something. They did sit down for these negotiations in November as well, but they couldn't come to any sort of deal, so it broke down, heightening the risk of having yet another one of these strikes, which, by the way, could cost the U.S. $5 billion a day if they choose to do this, and that just could cause all sorts of supply chain issues. The union has threatened, however, to strike again if a deal isn't reached by January 15th, so that's going to put Donald Trump in a really tough spot. Just 5 days before he becomes president, he could have a crisis already on his hands when he becomes president, and a tough one for him politically, too. Yeah. Because Trump, during his campaign, he was siding with the unions. He was, taking this working class pro-union approach. So you'd think he's going to want to side with them in some ways. His heart might be, I want to side with these guys. But economically, this is going to be a disaster. So there's no way he can let this type of strike just go on forever. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to deal with that if he has to, because port employers are threatening to pull even the wage deal away if they do strike again. So it could make them start from square one. So we'll have to see what happens, but pretty tricky politically and economically, and we'll see what comes from that.
Absolutely. And, Sam, I'm glad you brought up that automation issue. I don't remember even, a lot of the major news outlets speaking about that as much. I can remember, that number in my mind is the 77% wage increase that ended up getting 62. But yeah, that automation issue is a huge one there. It really is. And this, I can't help but wonder if the dock workers are not the only industry that might be wondering that with the rise of AI right now. The question is always going to be, is a robot going to take my job someday? Am I not going to be able to provide for my family? I think it's a really legitimate question.
And then here's where you're really stuck with this, right? Because say we do side with those workers, and I think there's part of us that wants to and have concern for them, and that's important. But if you completely side with them and say no automation whatsoever, what's going to happen when China and all our competitors fully automate and they become way more efficient, it doesn't cost nearly as much money, and then they just outcompete us, and then we have to shut down these businesses anyway because all the businesses went to China and these other places. So it's a balancing act for sure.
It sure is. It sure is. And something we'll be keeping an eye on for sure, Sam, as I know you said, January 15th is that deadline. So we basically have this week and next week to try to figure this thing out here. Very interesting. Hey, Sam, let's quickly get to John's question from Alabama before the end of the show here. I think we can squeeze that one in.
So John says this about the broad list. He says, I know people are trying to get rid of the broad list. And he says, if that happens, we will not be able to understand what people are talking about. So the question is, are we going to get rid of the broad list?
John, thank you for that question. Let me say there's no fear. We're not going to be getting rid of the broad list anytime soon. We have no plans for that in the near future. To my knowledge, you all have done a marvelous job of not doing the thing you're not supposed to do on the broad list, which is fishing from it. it, and which historically that was always Dan's biggest concern with keeping it, and the reasons why he always wondered maybe we should get rid of the broad list is because a lot of people would hear him talk about a stock that was on the broad list, and they would think, oh, Dan's talking about this stock, I can buy that stock. And we say very, very clearly, remember, the broad list is not for putting new money to work. The broad list is really kind of a hold list. It's there for, all these different companies. Yeah, it's exactly right. It's for reference companies that we're keeping our eyes on. You may find that you buy a stock and then it moves from the buy list to the broad list. That's not a reason to sell the stock. It just means that you're not supposed to put new money into there anymore. John, I'll tell you this, if you've got a question about anything that we're talking about, because that's really kind of, I think, what your question is, and that's regarding specific stock codes, the FISM symbols, how they compare, and you're not able to find it on the broad list, just send one of us an email. You can send me an email, seth@fism.tv, and I'd be happy to help you out as soon as I can. I can answer you as soon as the show's done. But John, I hope that's helpful for you there. Yeah, there's no plans to get rid of the broad list anytime soon, and so hopefully that can be helpful for you there. By the way, I'm really excited about the new layout of the buy and broad list and sell list on the new upcoming website also, so stay tuned for that. All right, folks, it was a great show. Remember, it's all his. Let's be found good and faithful stewards. We'll see you tomorrow.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.